Evan taps a spoon against his champagne glass while the server is still setting down my plate. "I want to make one more toast," he says. His hand settles on my shoulder, warm and familiar. I look up, expecting some joke about how long it took him to propose. Instead, he raises his glass toward his mother. "To the woman who made every good thing in my life possible." Lorraine presses 2 fingers to her lips. "And," Evan continues, smiling wider, "to her new beginning. The rear workshop bay at Hawthorne is yours, Mom." For a second, I think there must be another rear bay. Lorraine stands. "You told them?" Her surprise is polished but incomplete. She comes around the table and hugs him, while my welding table, plasma cutter, compressor, and fume extractor arrange themselves in my mind, every one of them still bolted inside the space he just gave away. Evan squeezes my shoulder. "Mara can work anywhere." I turn to him. "What did you tell the safety inspector was inside?" His fingers stop moving. Across the private dining room, Grant Cole lowers his champagne without drinking. He is Evan's cousin, his business partner, and the only other person at the table who knows how much machinery anywhere contains. Lorraine recovers first. "Oh, sweetheart, tonight isn't about paperwork." She touches my forearm with the gentle patience she usually saves for people who are blocking grocery aisles. "It's happy news." The server places a plate of short ribs in front of me. The sauce has been painted into a perfect brown crescent. 3 glazed carrots lean against the meat, like they're posing for a catalog. I look at Evan. "How long have you two been planning this?" "We haven't been planning." He picks up his glass again. "We've been talking." "Talking with a floor plan?" Lorraine glances at the cream-colored folder beside her purse. Evan sees me see it. "Can we not do this here?" My engagement ring catches the candlelight when I lift my water glass. 6 weeks ago, Evan slid it onto my finger in the empty front atrium at Hawthorne Glassworks, beneath the old steel trusses I had spent 2 winters helping him expose and seal. Lorraine had cried. Grant had brought a bottle of bourbon. I had thought the building was part of the proposal because it was part of us. Now I wonder if the timing worked the other way around. Lorraine returns to her chair, still smiling for the table. The folder is just inspiration. Fabric swatches, some photos. Of my bay? Of what it could become. Grant clears his throat. "Evan, is this the rear fabrication bay or the old shipping room?" "The fabrication bay," Evan says. "You said you were considering the shipping room." "The light is terrible in there," Lorraine says. "The light is terrible because it's a shipping room." She gives him an indulgent laugh. "Exactly." Grant doesn't laugh back. His wife, Celia, puts her hand lightly over his wrist. At the other end of the table, Evan's aunt studies the menu as if there may be an emergency exit printed between the desserts. Evan leans closer to me. "I was going to talk to you this weekend. You just talked to 14 people. I wanted Mom to have a nice moment." Lorraine lifts her glass, and I did. That gets a few strained smiles. She uses them as permission to begin the speech she brought with her. She talks about closing Bloomhouse after 27 years. She talks about how hard it was to say goodbye to her customers and how she still wakes at 5 expecting to drive to the wholesale flower market. Those parts are true. I helped carry buckets out of Bloomhouse on its last day. I dismantled a rusted display rack and loaded it into her van because Evan had a tenant meeting he couldn't miss. Then she talks about rebirth. The rear bay, she says, will become a warm, elegant workshop where people can learn floral design, host private dinners, and celebrate life's transitions. She calls it the conservatory at Hawthorne. My shop has 2 narrow windows facing a brick wall. Imagine those concrete floors with long, linen-covered tables, she says. Soft lighting, greenery coming down from the beams. The beams carry my compressed air lines, I say. Evan closes his eyes for half a second. Lorraine's smile tightens. Obviously, the industrial things would be removed. By whom? We'll work out the details. With me? Mara. Evan's voice drops into the tone he uses when he thinks volume is the problem. Nobody said you're being thrown into the street. No, you said I can work anywhere. The ring feels suddenly oversized, a little weight that wants to rotate under my finger. Grant reaches for the wine and fills his own glass. The annual fire inspection is next month. Evan looks at him. I know. Does the inspector know you're changing the use? We're not changing anything yet. Lorraine's folder says otherwise. I can see a printed seating diagram peeking out beneath the swatches. Small circles fill the rectangular outline of my shop. One circle sits exactly where my plasma table stands. The waiter asks if everything is all right with my meal. It's lovely, I tell him. It is. That's the absurd part. The meat falls apart when I touch it with my fork. Evan chose this restaurant because I once said their potatoes were worth driving across town for. He remembered that and forgot to ask before giving away the place where I earn my living. Dinner limps forward. Celia tells a story about Grant locking himself out of a rental unit in his socks. Evan's aunt asks Lorraine what flowers are in season for winter arrangements. Every new subject floats for a minute before sinking under the one nobody wants to touch. Evan keeps putting his hand on the back of my chair, not quite touching me, making the shape of affection. When the server brings dessert, Lorraine slides the cream folder toward me. I really do want your eye on this, she says. You understand space better than anyone. I open it. The first page is a rendering of my workshop without my equipment. White curtains cover the cinder block walls. Brass pendant lights hang where the fume duct runs. A bar occupies the corner where I store shielding gas cylinders. In the bottom right corner, beneath the name of an interior designer, is a date from 3 weeks ago. The second page is an estimate. The third is a calendar. Lorraine has circled a launch reception 6 weeks away. You've booked an event? I ask. Penciled in. There are 80 chairs on this plan. 48, she says, offended by my counting. There's one exit. There are 2 doors. One opens into my material rack, which won't be there. Evan pushes his dessert away. I said we'd help you relocate. You said that to her? I was trying to find a solution before bringing you a problem. You brought me the solution at our engagement dinner. Lorraine takes the folder back. You're making it sound sinister. I look at her. She is wearing the silver earrings I repaired after one of the posts snapped. I fixed them at my bench during a lunch break, holding the tiny piece under a magnifier while she stood beside me and described 3 jewelers who had told her it couldn't be done. You accepted my shop like it was a centerpiece, I say. Her eyes go cool. It is Evan's building. Half of it is, Grant says. This time Celia doesn't touch his wrist. Evan stares at his cousin. Helpful. I'm clarifying. The bay is leased, I say. Lorraine waves that away. To family. To Vale Architectural Metalworks, which is you. Yes. And you're marrying Evan. Also, yes. She seems genuinely unable to see how those facts might strengthen my position instead of erasing it. Evan asks for the check before coffee. He pays for the entire table, though I know the building account is 9 days from a loan payment, and one of the upstairs tenants still owes 2 months' rent. Outside, the wind cuts between the downtown buildings. Lorraine hugs Evan beneath the restaurant awning and tells him not to let this spoil such a beautiful night. Then she turns to me. I hope when you've had time you'll understand what this means to me. I understand what it means to you. She waits for more. I don't give it. Grant and Celia leave in one direction. Lorraine's rideshare stops at the curb. Before she gets in, she looks back at Evan. You did a lovely thing. He stands taller when she says it. That hurts more than the announcement. In the parking garage, our footsteps slap against concrete. Evan unlocks the car but doesn't get in. You embarrassed her, he says. I laugh once because I'm sure I misheard him. I embarrassed her? She closed her business, Mara. She's been lost for months. So you gave her mine. I gave her a room in a building I own. You gave her a room I lease containing equipment I own after planning around me for 3 weeks. We were going to move the equipment. To where? I found a place near the bypass. I stare at him. He pulls out his phone, swipes twice, and shows me a listing. A corrugated metal storage unit sits behind a tire warehouse. The photo was taken in summer, but I can still see rust bleeding down the overhead door. It's 1,200 square feet, he says. Does it have three-phase power? We could add it. Ventilation. Same. A loading entrance? It has an overhead door. Heat? He puts the phone away. Nothing is ever enough when you've decided to be angry. The garage seems to sharpen around us. White lines, gray pillars, red pipes overhead. My current shop is enough. It's the best space in the building. That's why I leased it. That's why Mom needs it. There it is, clean and simple. I take off the engagement ring, not because I've decided anything, but because my finger has started to ache. Evan watches me put it in the zippered pocket inside my purse. That's dramatic, he says. You toasted the transfer of my business space between appetizers and short ribs. I was trying to make my mother feel valued. And what were you trying to make me feel? His mouth opens. For one hopeful second, I think he might answer honestly. Then he says, "Can we go home?" We live in a narrow brick townhouse 12 minutes from Hawthorne. Evan bought it before we met, but I rebuilt the back stairs, installed the kitchen shelves, and paid half the mortgage every month under the heading shared expenses. Lorraine has a key for emergencies. In 6 years, her emergencies have included dropping off soup, borrowing a roasting pan, and checking whether our bedroom curtains really looked green from the street. During the drive, Evan grips the wheel at 10 and 2. I watch storefronts pass in bands of yellow light. "When did you promise it to her?" I ask. "I didn't promise. At dinner, you said it was hers. I wanted to show commitment. To her." He exhales through his nose. "She thinks you don't like her. Is that why you didn't tell me?" "I didn't tell you because every conversation about my mother becomes a trial." "That's convenient. I knew you'd react like this." The sentence settles between us. Not I was afraid you would, not I hoped you wouldn't. I knew you would. He had expected the wound. He had simply planned to deliver it where I would be least likely to bleed on the tablecloth. At home, I go straight to the small desk beneath the stairs. The house is quiet except for Evan opening and closing cabinets in the kitchen. My workshop lease is in a red accordion folder. 3 years remain with an option for 2 more. Grant insisted on a real lease when I moved in. Evan had joked that I was the only fiancé in town who needed a commercial document before plugging in a welder. I read every page. The lease names the rear fabrication bay, the material cage, and 2 assigned parking spaces. It requires written notice for entry except during an emergency. It makes me responsible for my machinery and Hawthorne responsible for maintaining access. Attached to it is the equipment schedule from the last insurance inspection. Plasma cutter, fume extractor, compressor, hydraulic shear, welding stations, all mine, all listed. Evan appears in the doorway with 2 glasses of water. He sets one beside me. "Are you looking for a weapon?" "I'm looking for what you assumed I wouldn't read." His jaw works. "My lawyer can review the lease. Our lawyer drew it up. Grant's lawyer, the building's lawyer. That doesn't mean you can stay forever. It means you can't hand Lorraine a key and call it done." At that, his gaze shifts. It is small, but I see it. "You already gave her a key. She needs to measure." "She's been inside my shop?" "Once or twice." I stand so fast the desk chair strikes the wall. Evan steps back. "Nothing was touched." "You don't know that." "I was with her." That isn't reassuring anymore. I grab my coat and keys. The blue tape around the workshop key is frayed at one corner, blackened from years of graphite and metal dust. Evan follows me to the front hall. It's almost midnight. I'm checking my equipment. "You've been drinking." "I had half a glass of champagne before your mother accepted my livelihood." "I'll drive." "No, Mara, don't turn this into something it isn't." My hand is already on the door. "What is it then?" His face changes. The anger drains just enough for me to see the fear beneath it. And the fear is almost worse. It means he knows there is something here worth losing. He looks toward the kitchen instead of at me. "It was supposed to make things easier," he says. For whom? He has no answer before I leave. Hawthorne Glassworks fills the corner of an old industrial block, 3 stories of soot-darkened brick and tall factory windows that reflect the streetlights. The original company name is still ghosted across the east wall. Evan fell in love with the building before he had financing, tenants, or a plan. I fell in love with the way he could stand in a ruined room and see it finished. My blue-taped key opens the rear service door. Inside, I smell cold steel, dust, and the faint scorched sweetness left by cutting metal. I switch on the overhead lights. My machines are where I left them. Lorraine's belongings are there too. 6 folding tables lean against my gas cylinder cage. Bundles of white fabric cover my material cart. A brass sample pendant hangs from the compressed air line, turning slowly in the draft. On my welding table sits a clear plastic box filled with brand new keys. Each one has a neat white label, Conservatory. I picked up one of the keys. It had the same square brass head as mine, only clean. The label was printed from a little machine, not handwritten. Lorraine had not wandered in with a tape measure once or twice. She had ordered a system. There were 12 keys in the box. I photographed them, then the tables against the cylinder cage, the fabric on my material cart, and the pendant light dangling from an airline rated for 175 pounds of pressure. The cord had been looped around the pipe and tied with a velvet ribbon. I was taking a wider shot when headlights swept across the rear windows. Evan's car door slammed outside. He came through the service entrance without knocking and stopped under the emergency light. "You couldn't wait until morning?" I held up the plastic box. "How many people have these?" "Gimme that." I moved it behind my back. He rubbed both hands over his face. His tie was gone, and his shirt collar had wilted. "They haven't been distributed." "Then why are they labeled?" "Because Mom likes to be organized. Your mother looped a live electrical fixture over my compressed air line. It isn't connected. It's hanging from the line." He looked up at the pendant as if it had appeared solely to weaken his argument. "I'll move it." "Don't touch anything." "Mara, I'm serious." "So am I. You came down here after midnight to photograph folding tables like you're building a criminal case. I'm documenting who entered my leased space." "Family entered your leased space. That's not a category in the lease." He paced to the edge of the plasma table. Even angry, he kept a safe distance from it. He knew the equipment. He had watched me install the cutter and had held the level against its frame while I tightened the anchors. There was still a black mark on one leg where he had dropped a wrench and blamed gravity. "I should have talked to you first," he said. "Yes, I'm saying that. You're saying it now because I found the keys. I'm saying it because the dinner got out of hand. The dinner went exactly how you planned it." "No, I planned for you to understand that Mom needs something to look forward to." "She can look forward to the shipping room." He made a frustrated sound. "She can't make that room beautiful. She ran a flower shop. Give her a chance." His mouth twitched despite himself. For half a second, I saw the man I knew, the one who could laugh in the middle of a fight and let the air back into a room. Then he looked at the folded tables, and the smile vanished. "The rear bay gives her a real shot," he said. "Street access, parking, decent ceilings. People will pay to hold events here. They won't once they see the brick wall through the windows. People pay extra for brick walls now." "That's true." Another almost smile. Another exit we didn't take. He put his hands in his pockets. "The unit by the bypass could work for you." "The unit by the bypass doesn't work for anyone. That's why it's been listed for 11 months. We'd improve it." "With what money?" "That isn't your concern. It becomes my concern every time Hawthorne's power bill lands on my desk. You're reimbursed. When there's money." He looked away. I set the key box on the welding table and opened the cabinet beneath it. My lockout kit was where I kept it. I shut down the compressor, bled the line, disconnected the plasma cutter at the breaker, and placed red locks through both disconnect handles. Evan watched me write the date on the tags. "What are you doing?" "Making sure nobody turns on equipment they don't understand." Nobody was going to. 12 keys disagree. I locked the gas cylinder cage and checked the valves. Then I photographed the meter readings and emailed the pictures to myself before anything could happen to my phone. Evan read the first tag, "Do not energize. Owner authorization required. You're making this hostile. Your mother put curtains on my steel stock. They're linens. They're flammable. They're in packaging. On a cart with grinding compound under it." He stared at the tags for another moment. "What do you want me to do tonight?" "Take her things out." "Where?" "That isn't my concern." His eyes narrowed at the return of his own words. I expected anger. Instead, he lifted the pendant free from the airline, gathered its cord carefully, and placed it on top of the folding tables. Then he took the bundles of fabric off my material cart, one by one. That was Evan's talent. He could step into the practical part of a disaster and become useful enough that you forgot who caused it. We moved nothing else. The tables were too close to the cylinder cage for me to pull them away without scraping the floor, and I wanted Lorraine present before her property crossed another threshold. At 1:30 in the morning, I sent an email to Evan, Lorraine, and Grant. I listed what I had found. I attached 6 photographs. I quoted the lease clause requiring written notice before entry and stated that nobody had permission to enter, use, alter, or remove anything from the rear fabrication bay without me present. I read it twice before hitting send. Evan stood beside the service door. "You copied Grant?" "He co-owns the building. He's going to think I'm an idiot." I slipped my phone into my pocket. "Was I supposed to protect you from that, too?" On the way out, I took the plastic box of new keys and locked it in my office drawer. Evan objected until I asked whether he wanted to explain in writing who each key was for. He went quiet. At home, he slept in our bed and I slept on the couch with my purse on the floor beside me. The ring stayed in its zippered pocket. Around 4, Evan came downstairs and draped a blanket over my legs. I pretended not to wake. Lorraine replied to my email at 6:12. What a sad way to memorialize a family misunderstanding. At 6:19, Grant replied to everyone. "Do not enter Mara's leased bay pending discussion." At 6:23, Evan texted me from upstairs. "You got what you wanted." I stared at the words until the screen dimmed. What I wanted was coffee in the kitchen, while Evan complained about the expensive jam I bought and ate most of it. What I wanted was to finish the Calder staircase before Friday and spend Sunday arguing pleasantly over music for our wedding. What I wanted had become so irrelevant that he could use it as an accusation. I showered, dressed, and drove back to Hawthorne. Luis Mendoza was waiting by the service door with 2 coffees and a cardboard tray of breakfast sandwiches. He contracted with me when a project needed a second fabricator, which lately was often. He took one look at the red tags on the disconnects. Inspection. Family. He handed me the larger coffee. Worse. We lost 40 minutes removing Lorraine's tables from the cylinder cage and carrying them into the corridor. I texted her first and received no response. I set the fabric and pendant beside them, photographed everything, then re-energized the equipment. At 8, the plasma cutter started with its usual low hum. The sound loosened something in my chest. Louis studied the cream rendering Lorraine had left beneath a bolt of linen. "This bar goes where your gas bottles are." I noticed. Bold. She likes people to remember a room they'll remember. The Calder staircase was a curved steel stringer for a renovated hotel lobby. We'd already fabricated it in sections, but one landing plate was 3/16 of an inch off after the building contractor revised the wall dimensions. My client, Nina Calder, was arriving at 10 to review the correction. At 9:20, the lights flickered. I waited for the compressor to settle and looked toward the ceiling. They flickered again. My phone rang. It was Philip from the second-floor photography studio. "Did you reset something?" he asked. "No. My north wall just lost power." "Call Evan." A pause. "I usually call you." "I know. That sentence cost me more than it should have." Philip called Evan. Then the massage therapist in Suite 204 called me about a radiator ticking hard enough to shake her framed certificates. I gave her Evan's number, too. By 10, Evan was in the electrical room with Grant, arguing over a tripped panel. Grant came through my shop afterward carrying a flashlight and wearing the expression of a man who had bitten into foil. "You could have told Philip the breaker number," he said. "I could have." He looked at the event supplies in the corridor. "This needs to stay private." I sent the email to the 3 people involved. Lorraine forwarded it to Celia. "That sounds like a Lorraine problem. Mara, we're refinancing in 6 weeks." "So I heard." His gaze sharpened. "From who?" "Evan discusses money when he wants me to cover it." Grant leaned against the doorframe. He was broader than Evan and less graceful, with gray beginning at both temples. He handled leases, permits, and the 1,000 boring tasks Evan referred to as details until one of them caught fire. "I didn't approve transferring your bay," he said. "But you knew he was considering it." "I knew Lorraine wanted a room. Evan told me he was looking at the shipping space." He toasted the fabrication bay like he was unveiling a statue. Grant winced. "That was stupid." "It was deliberate." He glanced toward Louise, who was grinding a weld at the far end of the shop, showering orange sparks into the booth. "Can the bypass unit work?" "No." "Could it work?" "Anything can work if Hawthorne pays for 3-phase service, exhaust, heat, secure storage, and the business I lose during a move." "How much?" "I'm not giving you a relocation estimate. I'm asking so I know the scale." "The scale is no." Nina Calder arrived before he could answer. She wore a camel coat over work boots and carried rolled plans beneath one arm. Grant stepped aside, and I spent the next hour discussing load points and finish samples while pretending my personal life wasn't stacked in a corridor. Nina noticed anyway. "Are you renovating?" she asked, eyeing the white fabric. "The building owners are exploring poor decisions." Grant, still within earshot, said, "One building owner." Nina nodded as if that clarified everything. By noon, Lorraine swept in through the service entrance wearing black trousers, a cream sweater, and the face of a woman determined to be gracious under attack. A younger designer followed her carrying a laser measure. Lorraine stopped when she saw her things in the corridor. "You put my linens on the floor." "They're on plastic." "This corridor is filthy. It's cleaner than my shop, which is why you wanted them out of there." The designer looked from Lorraine to me. "Should I wait in the car?" "Yes," I said. "No," Lorraine said. The designer went to the car. Lorraine crossed her arms. "I came to talk like adults." "With a laser measure. Kelsey bills by the hour." "So do I." She took that in, then surprised me by sitting on the nearest folding table. "Do you know what it feels like to close a place after 27 years?" "No." "It feels like dying in public. People come in and tell you how sad they are while buying your shelves for $12. Her voice didn't break. Lorraine would have considered that undignified. She picked a thread from her trousers and wound it around one finger. "I know this matters to you," I said. "You know, but you don't care. I helped you empty Bloomhouse. You carried things. I repaired your cooler twice. I made your window racks. I covered 3 Saturdays when Denise was out. And I thought you did those things because we were becoming family. So did I." That landed. She looked toward my welding booth where Louise had politely found something loud to do. "I'm not trying to take your business," she said. "You're sitting on furniture you placed around my equipment. Evan said you'd move." Evan didn't ask me. He shouldn't have to beg permission in his own building. There's a lot of ground between asking and begging. She stood. "You offered to help me start something new. I offered to build display frames for the shipping room. The shipping room is a tomb, then rent somewhere else. With what money?" The question came out raw enough that we both went still. Lorraine smoothed her sweater. "Evan believes in this. Evan wants you to feel better." What an ugly way to describe loyalty. My phone buzzed on the welding table. Evan's name appeared, followed by an email notification from Hawthorne Glassworks. Lorraine saw it too. "He's trying to solve this," she said. I opened the email. Formal notice. The rear fabrication bay would be accessed Monday morning by a licensed machinery mover for relocation assessment. Hawthorne reserved its rights as property owner. Attached was a photograph of the rusted unit by the bypass. Lorraine lifted her chin. He found you another space. I read the message again. Then I noticed the second notification, this one from my insurance broker. Please call immediately regarding reported loss of secured access. Equipment coverage may be affected. I looked down at my blue-taped key. Lorraine's expression changed, not into guilt, but recognition. She had understood the danger before I did. They're changing the exterior locks Monday, she said. I looked from the key to her. How long have you known? Lorraine's mouth tightened. How long? Evan mentioned it this morning. He emailed me 30 seconds ago. He didn't want you arriving Monday and making another scene. I'm standing in my shop, and you're determined to make that the only fact that matters. I called my insurance broker while Lorraine was still sitting on the table. She stood when she realized I wasn't going to continue the argument for her benefit. Joe answered on the second ring. Tell me you still have working keys, she said. I'm inside now. That wasn't my question. I turned away from Lorraine. The landlord says the exterior locks will be changed Monday. And who gets the new keys? I haven't been told. Joe sighed. Papers shifted near her phone. Your policy requires secured access under your control. If the landlord denies entry while your equipment remains energized on the premises, I have to report a material change in risk. I locked out the major equipment. Can the owner remove your locks? Not without cutting them. Can the owner cut them? I looked at Lorraine. Yes. Then write to them today. State that your locks are safety devices, not access locks, and they may not be removed. Copy me. If your building access changes, call before you do anything heroic. I'm not heroic. Everybody says that right before using a crowbar. Lorraine picked up her purse. Joe, what happens to my coverage? If you lose control of the premises, best case, we suspend equipment coverage until access is restored. Worst case, underwriting cancels the business package. The Calder contract required active coverage. So did every commercial job in my queue. I'll call you back. Lorraine waited until I put down the phone. I had no idea it affected your insurance. You didn't ask. I shouldn't have to understand every clause of your policy to use a room. You don't have to understand anything if you don't use it. Her face flushed. Evan said the movers would handle all of this. The movers can't touch my equipment without authorization. He owns the floor beneath it. Then he can enjoy the floor. Kelsey's car idled beyond the rear windows. Lorraine looked toward it, then back at me. You think I wanted him to announce it that way? Yes. I wanted a quiet dinner with the three of us. He wanted witnesses. That surprised me enough that she saw it. He said if he made a firm decision, you'd adjust, she continued. He said you respect confidence. A hard little laugh escaped me. It sounded like something breaking. Lorraine's expression softened for one dangerous second. He loves you, Mara. He studies me. All husbands study their wives. He isn't my husband. The engagement ring felt heavy inside my purse, though the bag was across the room. Lorraine lifted one shoulder. Then maybe this is where you decide if you want him to be. She collected her linens and left the tables for later. Evan ignored my calls. At 4, he sent a text saying we should talk at home, where neither of us had an audience. I replied by email, copying Grant and Joe. I stated that my equipment remained installed and insured under Vale Architectural Metalworks. I did not authorize removal of the lockout devices, machinery, ductwork, electrical connections, guards, stock, or safety barriers. Any change to my access had to include delivery of keys before the locks were changed. Grant called 3 minutes later. You copied your insurer? Yes. Why would you bring them into this? They're already in it. Somebody reported a loss of secured access. Silence. Was that Evan? I asked. He called the building's carrier about the planned move and told them I'd lost access? He probably answered a question badly. That's becoming an expensive personality trait. Grant breathed into the phone. Give me the weekend. For what? To keep this from turning into a formal dispute. It became formal when Evan sent a mover. I can stop the lock change. Can you? Another silence answered for him. That night, Evan sat at the kitchen table with a yellow legal pad. He had drawn a line down the middle. On one side, he had written Mara. On the other, he had written Mom. I set my purse on the counter. Are those teams? Needs. Under my name, he had written power, ventilation, loading, heat. Under Lorraine's, light, parking, atmosphere, accessibility. You left out consent, I said. Sit down. I've spent all day sitting down with people explaining why I need access to my own business. Please. I sat. He slid the pad toward me. We improved the bypass unit at Hawthorne's expense. Proper electrical service, heating, everything. You stay in the rear bay until it's ready. That takes months. 6 weeks. You can't get a 3-phase panel delivered in 6 weeks. I know a guy. You know a guy who sells kitchen appliances. He knows commercial suppliers. I pushed the pad back. Why are you doing this? Because there are 2 people I love and 1 room they both need. Your mother wants it. I need it. She needs a chance to rebuild. So do I, now. He flinched. I had wanted that. The realization made me tired. Evan leaned back and pressed his palms against his eyes. Bloomhouse was the one thing Mom had that was hers. She stayed open years longer than she should have, because closing felt like admitting her life had gotten smaller. I know. You don't know what it was like when my dad left. She kept that place going through everything. We're not talking about Bloomhouse. We are always talking about Bloomhouse. There was no performance in his voice now. He was the man who had spent his adult life converting his mother's sacrifices into debts he could never finish paying. I lowered my voice. Why did you propose before telling me? His hands dropped. That isn't related. It's the only part I can't make sense of. I was already planning to propose. But why then? Because I love you. You knew you were going to give her the bay. I knew it might be hard. You thought the ring would make me easier. No. His answer came quickly. His face did not. I stood. He caught my wrist, then released it before I had to pull away. Mara, don't. You made me part of the financing. That's not fair. You counted on me not wanting to cancel the wedding. You counted on me being embarrassed. You counted on everyone at that table thinking a good fiancé would say yes. I thought you'd help. I have helped. You just stopped noticing it as a choice. I slept on the couch again. Monday morning, my blue-taped key slid into the service door lock and stopped halfway. I tried it once more, although I already knew. A locksmith's van was parked near the loading area. Beside it stood Evan, Grant, and 2 men wearing navy jackets with the name Talbot Machinery stitched over the pockets. Evan held out a new key. I was coming to give you this. You said before the locks changed. You're here now. I took it from him. It opened the door, but the small victory felt like accepting water from the person who had shut off the tap. The movers followed us inside. One walked around the plasma table, taking photographs. The other crouched near the floor anchors. Owner of the machine here? He asked. I am. He held out a tablet. We'll need your authorization to inspect disconnects, release anchors, and prepare a rigging estimate. I don't authorize any of that. Evan stepped forward. I hired you. You hired an assessment, the mover said. She owns the equipment? Yes, I said. He owns the building, Grant said. The mover straightened. Then he can authorize work on the building. I need her signature before we touch the machines. Evan's neck reddened. Nobody's moving anything today. We still need to inspect the connections. No, I said. The man looked at my red safety locks, then at Evan. We're not cutting those. He charged Hawthorne a 4-hour minimum and left after 19 minutes. It should have felt like a win. Instead, Nina Calder called while their truck was still pulling away. Someone from Hawthorne told our contractor your production schedule may be disrupted, she said. I watched Evan and Grant argue beside the loading entrance. That's possible. How possible? I'm working on it. We can't install half a staircase. I know. If you can't confirm access and insurance by Wednesday, I have to consider another fabricator. After the call, I went into my office and shut the door. My blue taped key lay beside the new unmarked one. One had memory but no access. The other had access only because Evan had decided to hand it over. I opened my email and filed the formal safety access notice Joe had helped me word. At 3, I separated my shop's utility account from Hawthorne's master payment arrangement. I paid my metered share and sent Grant the remaining balance for the common areas. At 4, Philip called about another breaker problem. I gave him Evan's number. At 5, Denise Harper appeared at the service door carrying a canvas tote and looking as if she regretted every decision that had brought her there. I probably shouldn't be here, she said. That's popular lately. She managed a nervous smile. Lorraine thinks I'm helping with the launch. Are you? I was. From the tote, she removed a binder. Inside were vendor confirmations, catering estimates, and a printed calendar. Lorraine had taken deposits for 3 floral workshops, 2 private dinners, and a corporate reception. The first workshop was 11 days away. She told people the room was approved, Denise said. I asked about the machinery. She said Evan had handled it. I turned to another page. It was a preliminary fire and occupancy questionnaire submitted through Hawthorne. Under responsible equipment operator, Evan had typed my name. Attached was an old equipment schedule from my insurance file. He gave this to her? I asked. Lorraine said you'd agreed to help. She showed me your texts. Years of messages. Anything I can do. Happy to help. We'll make it work. Ordinary generosity, rearranged into permission. Grant was still upstairs. I called him down and laid the binder open on my welding table. He read the calendar first, then the questionnaire. His face changed when he reached my name. I didn't submit this. Did Evan? The application came through his account. He called Evan on speaker. Evan answered with, I'm in the middle of something. Did you list Mara as the operator for Lorraine's occupancy review? A pause. It's the existing equipment file. That's not what I asked. I needed to show the machines were managed. By someone you're locking out? I gave her a key. Grant closed his eyes. The lender's inspector is coming Thursday. If the fire file shows an unapproved event operation, it won't. Mom's designer is clearing the room. My equipment is staying, I said. Evan went silent. Grant looked at me across the table. If we request the safety inspection now, will you attend? It was the choice I had been avoiding. A failed inspection could delay the refinance. It could hurt tenants who had nothing to do with us. It would also put the truth in a record Evan couldn't rewrite over dinner. Yes, I said. The inspection was scheduled for Thursday morning, 1 hour before the lender's walkthrough. When I arrived, my old blue taped key was in my pocket, useless. Evan waited outside the service door in a suit. Lorraine stood beside him with the cream folder pressed against her ribs. Through the window, I could see white curtains, brass lights, and narrow aisles formed around the dark shapes of my machines. The inspector walked up carrying a tablet. Evan held out a new key to me. I kept my hands at my sides. After you, I said. Evan stared at me. The new key balanced on his palm. The inspector looked between us. She was a compact woman with silver hair pulled into a knot and a city badge clipped to her jacket. Is there a problem with the lock? She asked. No, Evan said quickly. We just replaced it. Who has access? The owners and authorized tenants. Then one of the owners can let us in. Grant stood near the loading entrance with the lender's representative, who had arrived early and was pretending not to listen. He nodded once at Evan. Evan unlocked the service door. Lorraine followed him inside. I let the inspector enter before me. The white curtains made the bay feel smaller. They had been hung from temporary cables along the cinder block walls, hiding outlets, conduit, and most of the warning placards. 2 linen-covered tables stood between the welding booth and the plasma cutter. Brass pendant lights glowed above them, powered by orange extension cords taped across the floor. My machinery rose through all of it like shipwrecks at low tide. The inspector stopped 3 steps inside. "What exactly is the proposed use?" "Floral design workshops," Lorraine said. "Small private gatherings, nothing disruptive. Food service, sometimes catered. Alcohol, possibly wine with dinner." Evan spoke over her. "None of that is approved yet. This is staging." Lorraine turned. "We have the first workshop next Saturday." The inspector looked at Evan. He rubbed the side of his jaw. "It can be postponed." She opened the occupancy application on her tablet. "This says the fabrication equipment remains under the supervision of the existing operator during mixed use." "That was the preliminary plan," Evan said. "Who is the existing operator?" I raised my hand slightly. "Vale Architectural Metalworks." She read my name from the screen. "Mara Vale?" "Yes." "Did you prepare the equipment schedule attached to this application?" "I prepared it for an insurance inspection 18 months ago." "Did you authorize its use here?" "No." Evan turned toward me. "Mara." The inspector lifted one finger without looking up. He stopped speaking. "Did you approve a mixed-use plan for this space?" she asked. "No." "Were you informed that the space would be staged for event occupancy?" "At our engagement dinner." Her eyes rose from the tablet. Lorraine folded her arms. "That makes it sound ridiculous." I looked at the fabric drawn across the front of my gas cylinder cage. It felt ridiculous. The inspector walked the perimeter with her tablet. She measured the aisle between the plasma cutter and the linen tables. 31 inches. She pulled back a curtain and found 3 electrical disconnects hidden behind it. She followed an extension cord to a pendant light attached to an outlet strip beside my welding station. At the cylinder cage, she stopped again. "This needs to remain unobstructed." "It usually is," I said. Lorraine reached for the curtain. "We can move that now." "Leave it as found, please." The inspector photographed it. Evan came beside me. "Did you know it would look like this?" "No." "You saw the rendering." "A rendering doesn't show extension cords." He lowered his voice. "You could have warned me." "I warned you in writing. You knew she was moving things in. You changed the locks." His face hardened, but the lender's representative had moved closer, so he stepped away. The inspector reached my safety disconnects. The red locks were still in place. "Your lockout devices?" she asked. "Yes." "Who has the keys to these?" "Only I do." "Has anyone requested that you remove them?" The machinery mover asked to inspect the connections. I declined. One of her eyebrows lifted. "Why?" "Because I did not authorize relocation." She entered something on the tablet. Lorraine's phone began ringing inside her purse. She silenced it without looking. A moment later, it rang again. "That will be a vendor," she said. "May I step outside?" "Please stay available." The inspector continued toward the second door. Lorraine's seating plan had treated it as an exit, but my vertical stock rack stood 6 feet inside it, exactly where it had stood for years. The door itself opened, but the path narrowed between lengths of square tubing and a rolling rack of sheet steel. "This is not a compliant event egress route," she said. Evan pointed toward the service entrance. "We can use the main door." "For 48 occupants?" 40, Lorraine said. "Your application says 48. We adjusted. Your calendar shows a corporate reception for 60. Lorraine looked at me. "I gave Grant the binder," I said. "You had no right to take that." "Denise brought it to me." For the first time, Lorraine looked frightened rather than offended. The inspector returned to the center of the bay. "This space is currently approved for fabrication and limited associated business occupancy. Event use is not approved. The temporary wiring, concealed safety controls, restricted equipment clearances, obstructed cylinder access, and inadequate egress all need correction before any further review." "We'll clear the equipment," Evan said. You'll need authorization from its owner, license disconnection where required, revised electrical and ventilation plans, and a new inspection after removal. Until then, the equipment remains part of the approved fabrication layout. Lorraine stepped forward. How long would that take? I don't estimate contractors' schedules. What if we simply don't turn the machines on? That doesn't make them furniture. Grant covered his mouth with one hand. It might have been a cough. It might not. The inspector faced me. The safety file identifies you as responsible for equipment control. Are you able to secure the space? Not reliably. My key stopped working after the exterior lock was changed Monday. Evan handed me a replacement at this inspection. She looked at the open door, then at Evan. Who authorized the lock change? I did. She has a new key. Who else does? I do. Grant does. My mother. Any contractors? The designer. Kelsey has one for measuring, Lorraine said. She isn't a contractor in that sense. The inspector typed for several seconds. If Ms. Vale remains the responsible operator, this bay has to be secured as an active fabrication area under her control. Building owners retain emergency access, but public access and unsupervised access by event staff are incompatible with the current plan. If Hawthorne wants a different operator or use, submit a revised safety plan and decommission the equipment first. Evan looked at Grant. We can revise the plan. Not before the lender walkthrough, Grant said. The representative beside him closed his portfolio. We won't complete the walkthrough today. Evan's head snapped around. The issues are contained to one bay. The application is inaccurate. Access control is disputed, and the proposed event use affects the building's liability profile. Send us the inspection report and a corrective action plan. He left through the service door without shaking anyone's hand. Grant watched him cross the loading area. Then he turned to Evan. Restore Mara's access. Today. She has a key. Change the lock again. Keys to Mara, you, and me. Emergency access only for us. No copies. Lorraine stared at him. You can't lock me out of my own studio. It isn't your studio. Evan said his cousin's name in warning. Grant took out his phone. I'm calling the locksmith. This was your idea, too, Evan said. The shipping room was my idea. A room with no tenant, no plasma cutter, and no current safety file. Mara escalated it. You put her name on the application. I used an existing form. You represented that she would supervise equipment during your mother's events. I thought she would help once we worked things out. The inspector closed her tablet. My report will be available this afternoon. Event occupancy is denied pending correction. The fabrication use may continue once access and safety conditions are restored. She handed me a card. Call if the lockout devices are disturbed. Lorraine waited until the inspector left. Then she turned on me. Is this what you wanted? Behind her, a pendant light swung slightly on its cable. I wanted you out of my bay. You could have said that without humiliating me. I did. At dinner, in the garage, by email, in here. You let me spend money. I told you to stop. You knew the inspection would fail. I knew my equipment was still bolted to the floor. Neither of you bothered to find out what that meant. Her lips parted, then closed. Evan moved between us. That's enough. Lorraine looked at him with open disbelief. Now it's enough. Mom, you stood in that restaurant and said the space was mine. I know. You promised. I was wrong. The words seemed to cost him physically. His shoulders folded inward. Lorraine's face went blank. She removed the white-labeled key from her ring and placed it on the welding table. I wanted you to choose me once without making me ask, she said. Evan looked stricken. I did choose you. No, you announced me. There's a difference. She walked out, leaving the cream folder beneath one of the linen tables. The locksmith arrived before noon. I watched him remove the cylinder Evan had installed 3 days earlier. When he handed me 2 new keys, Grant asked me to test both. They turned cleanly. Grant collected the copies from Evan and kept one emergency key in a sealed envelope for the building office. He made Evan email written confirmation that Lorraine, Kelsey, and the event vendors had no access. Nina accepted Joe's proof that my coverage remained active. Luis and I worked until nearly midnight correcting the Calder landing plate. We delivered it Friday morning, on schedule. By the time I got home, the white curtains had been removed from the bay. Evan had done it alone. Faint red marks crossed his palms where the cable had burned through his skin. He was sitting at our kitchen table with the engagement ring in front of him. I stopped in the doorway. "I found it in your purse," he said. "You went through my purse?" "I was looking for the bypass unit estimate. There isn't one. I know that now." He pushed the ring toward the empty chair opposite him. "Grant says the refinance will be delayed at least a month. We have to pay for another inspection and an extension on the appraisal. I'm sorry Grant is paying for your decision. He says I'm paying the added costs personally. That sounds fair." Evan laughed without humor. "You won." I remained standing. "The bay is yours," he said. "Mom's canceled everything. She's refunding the deposits. Grant is adding a clause to the management agreement so neither of us can enter a tenant's space except for an emergency." That should have been there. I told him the same thing. That surprised me. He rubbed his injured palm with his thumb. "Mom found a small studio on Fulton. Denise is helping her negotiate the rent." "Good. It has terrible parking. She'll mention that often." He smiled, and I almost did. Then he picked up the ring. "We can survive this," he said. "The wedding doesn't have to become another casualty." "Another casualty?" "You know what I mean." "I don't think I do." He stood and came around the table. "I was wrong. I should have asked. I should never have put your name on that form. I restored the bay. What else can I do?" The question was sincere. That was the worst part. "You keep talking about the bay like it's something you gave back." I did give it back. The lease gave it back. The movers gave it back. The inspection gave it back. Grant gave it back because the lender walked out. You fought every one of them. I'm here now because you lost. His fingers closed around the ring. "I didn't propose to trap you," he said. "Did you know about the bay when you proposed?" He looked at the table. "Yes." "Did you think being engaged would make me more likely to accept it?" "I thought it would make us think like a family." "You mean I'd think like your family?" "What's that supposed to mean?" "Lorraine needs something, so you provide it. If you don't have it, you provide something that belongs to somebody close enough not to leave. That isn't fair to her. It's about you." He looked down at the ring in his hand. "I was afraid you would always keep one foot outside. Your own business, your own lease, your own accounts. Every time I talked about combining things, you wanted another document. Because documents don't toast you at dinner and give away your workshop." He flinched again. I stepped closer and opened my hand. For a moment, he thought I wanted him to put the ring back on my finger. Hope moved across his face so quickly that I nearly closed my hand. Instead, I took the ring from him and set it on the yellow legal pad where he had divided my needs from his mother's. "I wanted to marry you," I said. "I just didn't know marriage meant everything I brought became available for you to promise." "It doesn't." "It did when you thought I couldn't stop you." He stared at the ring. "Are you leaving?" "Yes." "For good?" I looked toward the shelves I had installed, the stairs I had rebuilt, and the kitchen where I had spent years turning his house into ours. "For me," I said. "That's the part you never planned for." I rented a furnished apartment close to the hotel project and removed my things from the townhouse over 2 weekends. Evan never made it difficult. He packed my welding books carefully and labeled the boxes in his precise block handwriting. On the last trip, he handed me the roasting pan Lorraine was always borrowing. "This is yours," he said. "It was your grandmother's. She'd haunt me if I let Mom take it." I left it on the counter between us. For the 3 years remaining on my lease, Hawthorne treated my bay like any other tenant's space. Grant sent written notice before inspections. Evan stopped managing access and handled the costs created by the failed review. Lorraine opened her studio on Fulton with 12 work tables, no private dinners, and parking she described as criminal. She never apologized. She did send back the repaired silver earrings in a padded envelope with a note that said they had always pinched. I kept them in my desk. When my lease ended, I did not use the renewal option. I found a clean industrial bay with 3-phase power, radiant heat, a loading entrance, and windows facing west. The rent was higher. The first month, I covered it without anyone's help. Grant met me at Hawthorne after the last machine was loaded. The rear bay looked enormous without my equipment. Pale rectangles marked the concrete where the plasma table and welding bench had stood. I placed both brass keys in his palm. The blue tape on the old one was almost black with metal dust. "You sure?" he asked. "We can renew." "I'm sure." At the new shop, I stood outside the service door with a roll of blue painter's tape in one hand and a new brass key in the other. I wrapped a clean strip around the square head, pressed the edge smooth with my thumb, and turned it in a lock that had never belonged to anyone else's promise.